This one's wife. Liam Payne dead. She laughed at him. Hello, I'm HG Tudor. Many of you will be aware that former One Direction star Liam Payne died after falling from a balcony. He died aged 31 after suffering a fall from the third floor of a hotel in Buenos Aires in Argentina. Police stated in a statement that they discovered Payne's body after an emergency crew responded to a call in the upscale neighbourhood of Palermo on Wednesday. For those of you who may not be aware, Payne had risen to global fame as part of the much-loved boy band created on the X Factor TV show in 2010, along with Harry Styles, Louis Tomlinson, Niall Horan and Zayn Malik. Earlier this month, Payne had attended the Argentina concert of his former One Direction bandmate, Horan. According to police in Buenos Aires, officers at the scene were initially responding to reports of an aggressive man who may have been under the effects of drugs and alcohol. When they arrived at the hotel, officials were told a loud sound had been heard in an interior courtyard. Soon after, they discovered the body there. A police investigation has been launched. Emergency Medical Services Director Alberto Crescenti told local media that Payne had suffered serious injuries and that an autopsy will be carried out. Mr. Crescenti declined to answer questions about the circumstances of Payne's fall from the balcony. He had posted, Payne, on Snapchat just hours before the incident saying it's a lovely day here in Argentina. But the video was from earlier in the week where he'd spent time with his girlfriend Kate Cassidy. Naturally, upsetting news for those who are a fan of this particular pop star, and the circumstances of what actually happened will undoubtedly be addressed as part of the police investigation. Now, the death of Liam Payne provided me with two opportunities to demonstrate aspects of narcissism to you. The first is that when I heard of his death and then read the appropriate news items, I'm not a particular fan of his music or One Direction, so it's not something that impacts upon me with regard to thinking about his music. But what in actual fact happened was that on learning about his death, it made me recall the time that this one's wife had laughed at him. Thus, this provides me with an opportunity to explain to you how this one's wife came upon my radar. So, me, HG Tudor, as a narcissistic psychopath, somebody that pursues the prime aims, this one's wife comes up on my radar, as does Liam Payne. Now, my narcissism needs to assert control over those that are on my radar. Now, in respect of Liam Payne, he's dead. Thus, my narcissism recognises that there is nothing that can be done in relation to asserting control over him, other that I can talk about him in the context of this video, and people will provide a response and a reaction to that. But it also brings this one's wife onto my radar. And it brought her onto my radar with regard to recalling that she giggled and laughed after Liam Payne gave a performance at a Commonwealth Day service. Thus, this one's wife comes up on my radar, and similarly, she must be brought under control. I recognise that I'm not going to do that directly by going to see her or contacting her. I'm not going to waste my resources to do so. But what I can do so is by talking about her in this video, utilising her as an example vis-a-vis narcissism, and also allowing you to understand more about her behaviour. Thus, what you're getting is a real-life instance of how somebody comes up on my radar, it prompts a recollection of their behaviour, and I use that then to indirectly assert control over them. You may recall also that instance, which is demonstrative of the flippant nature of this one's wife and how on repeated occasions she has been found to be wanting in relation to her behaviour when she's on an official engagement. In this instance, it was the first official engagement that this one's wife had attended with the Queen, and it was reported back in March 2018, way before many people necessarily realised just what she was. And it wasn't a gossip mag that reported on this, it was the independent newspaper, a broadsheet, which explained that this one's wife, along with Prince Harry, were caught making fun of Liam Payne after his performance at Westminster Abbey. The One Direction star performed a cover of John Mayer's Waiting on the World to Change during their Commonwealth Day service, marking this one's wife's first royal engagement with the Queen. As Mr. Payne fist-bumped his band in celebration of the performance, Prince Harry is caught raising his eyebrows at this one's wife, and she responded with a concealed giggle. In those circumstances, this demonstrates the contempt that she has for people because, of course, she has no emotional empathy. And her response is directed at her husband in order to assert control over him by responding favourably. It's a benign response, laughing at his eyebrow waggle. But it's disrespectful to the individuals that have just performed because she's basically laughing at them in a contemptuous way. Furthermore, she's meant to be there in an official capacity, not arsing around giggling like a silly schoolgirl. But she has form in that regard, because you'll remember when she was on the balcony and she kept turning round like a schoolchild that couldn't behave herself. And Harry had to, with his eyes, and then tell her, you need to be looking forward. You may recall from that footage, every other member of the royal family was looking forwards, except for this one's wife. She couldn't manage to stand there and do what everybody else was doing. She needed to be turning round and looking at Harry, who was unimpressed with her behaviour. But it hasn't ended with that either. You'll recall last year, back in November last year, there's the footage which shows her mocking Maria Reitmeier, who's autistic, when she sang the Canadian national anthem at the Vancouver Canucks game. It was entirely disrespectful. And here you have an individual who's in her 40s, who was meant to be a member of the royal family, albeit non-working, now. But it demonstrates the grotesque nature of this one's wife. The ice hockey game that she was at was a special day in support of autism charities in Canada, and it therefore made sense for the national anthem to be sung by an autistic lady. But for some reason, this one's wife thought that that was amusing. And as you'll recall from the footage, which has been analysed in parts passim, she stood there with a stupid smirk on her face because she found the rendition amusing. You look around the faces of everybody else, nobody else is smirking. Nobody else is acting up in the way that she is. They're paying attention. They're showing the respect to the national anthem and the fact that there's somebody singing it. But with her, she has this stupid smirk plastered on her face and then looks up at Harry as if to try and cause him to join in, but he doesn't. Thus, 3 instances, and there are plenty of other occasions, which I'm sure that you can remind me of in the comments section, where this one's wife has behaved inappropriately in a public situation. Those are just 3. As I say, there are plenty more. But she did so in relation to Liam Payne's performance. She did so in relation to the autistic lady, Maria Reitmeier, and she did so on the balcony. Why is it that she behaves like this? Well, unsurprisingly, it's because of her narcissism. She has no emotional empathy. Therefore, she doesn't have the concept of respect, and her cognitive empathy doesn't even demonstrate respect on certain occasions. because the situation has to be about her. When Liam Payne's performing, it's not about her. It's about somebody else. And therefore, she needs to prompt a reaction from Harry by responding to him. And because she has that sense of entitlement, and because her facade management doesn't always function in the way that it ought to, she shows herself to be disrespectful. On the balcony, it's not about her, it's about the events in front. And every other member of the royal family is looking forwards, but this one's wife has to keep turning around trying to get Harry's attention because her narcissism demands that she does so. Because she's craving that fuel subconsciously. When she's listening to the singer, again, it's not about her, it's about the singer. But here, because she's a mocking, unpleasant and grotesque individual, her narcissism causes her to find the whole thing amusing. And therefore, what she's attempting to do is provoke a reaction from Harry once again, but he doesn't look at her, so it causes her to look away. We know she's mocked the Queen, for example. And it also demonstrates this lack of respect towards a singer, towards Liam Payne, as another singer, towards the Canadian national anthem. It's all demonstrative of her absence of emotional empathy, how self-absorbed she is, that she is a deplorable individual that behaves in this way. It's not just a lack of intelligence, she's not that bright, but that does play into it. Because were she more intelligent and have a more evolved form of narcissism, her narcissism would recognise through appropriate facade management that it was inappropriate to snigger. It's inappropriate to sneer and smirk. It's inappropriate to keep turning around. And therefore, the facade would be maintained, and thus the disrespect wouldn't be shown. There are plenty of narcissists who manage to demonstrate respect at the appropriate times because of their facade management and cognitive empathy being superior. You saw the way, for instance, like the ghoul that she is, she turned up at Uvalde. A lack of respect in that regard. The way that she turned up in Nigeria and Colombia, inappropriately dressed, time and time again. Because she has no respect, and her ability to learn respect is limited. Many people would look at it and say she almost behaves like a brattish teenager, and it's true, because in a sense, what you're seeing is the aspect of her that hasn't learned how to behave. And whilst the narcissism tries to do its job through facade management to cover that up, it fails. It shows what a grotesque and deplorable individual that she is. That she doesn't have the evolved narcissism to demonstrate, to fake it. But the absence of emotional empathy, her contempt, her nastiness shines through. And in the circumstances, what you have here is another instance of how she's come up on my radar, which as a consequence of the death of Liam Payne, which has then necessitated me giving you these examples of her poor behaviour, and also enabling me to demonstrate to you that because of her narcissism, she lacks the ability to convey the appropriate response at the appropriate time. Certain narcissists can. They've learned that. Their imitation game is far superior. Hers isn't. She hasn't got the appropriate response because she has no emotional empathy. And her narcissism hasn't got the right level to ensure that she conveys the appropriate response, the appropriate emotion, the appropriate expression at the relevant time. Sometimes it works, but many instances it doesn't. And this prompted me, it was a reminder to share with you 3 examples of when she's failed, amongst many, many others. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.